Hello, good evening. Welcome to North West Tonight, Monday evening. I'm Roger Johnson. Thank you very much for joining us. Our top story. An extraordinary person, but not in a good way. The jury hears closing speeches from both sides at Lucy Letby's retrial. The former nurse denies attempting to murder a newborn baby girl at the Countess of Chester Hospital. Also tonight, Stephen Cook disappeared like the Lancashire teenager Jay Slater almost 20 years ago. His brother tells us not knowing is the hardest part.
They're the things that keep you up at night, you know, in your moments when you wake. They're the kind of things that come to your head and to your imagination.
From the northwest to the far east, a new route from Manchester to Shanghai. Seaside holiday.
And the weather for the next few days remains unsettled and on the cool side for the start of July. Join me later for the full forecast.
The jury in the retrial of the former nurse, Lucy Letby, has been told that she is an extraordinary person, but not in a good way. The prosecution and the defence have both been making their closing speeches today in a case where Miss Letby denies attempting to murder a newborn baby girl at the Countess of Chester Hospital in 2016. The defence said the evidence of the key witness was pathetic. Andy Gill sent this from Manchester Crown Court.
Lucy Letby is accused of trying to murder a girl known as Baby K by deliberately dislodging her breathing tube. The key witness is a consultant, Dr. Ravi Jayaram, who says that when he walked into nursery number 1 at the Countess of Chester Hospital, he saw Lucy Letby doing nothing as the baby's blood oxygen levels dropped. He told the jury he didn't go to the police then because he feared repercussions from the hospital management and regretted not doing so. But in his closing speech today, Ben Myers KC for the defence described Dr. Jayaram's evidence as pathetic and incredible. Mr. Myers said Ravi Jayaram's evidence is an insult to everybody's intelligence. To say he saw what he saw and thought what he thought and do nothing is ridiculous and unbelievable. Mr. Myers said a child would have known what to do, to go to the police. Mr. Myers also said the jury should not use Lucy Letby's convictions for murder and attempted murder last year as a shortcut to a guilty verdict in this case. Earlier, Nick Johnson KC, who's leading the prosecution, gave his closing speech. He said Lucy Letby is an extraordinary person, not in a good way. He read the names of the babies she was convicted of murdering, describing it as a terrible list. He said this was the shocking and dreadful context for the single allegation in this case. He also said the jury should ask themselves what Dr. Jayaram would gain by making up allegations about Lucy Letby. Today, the judge told the jury they must put aside emotion and sympathy and decide this case purely on the evidence. And he said they should not convict her solely or mainly on the basis of her previous convictions. Lucy Letby denies one charge of attempted murder. Andy Gill, BBC North West Tonight at Manchester Crown Court.
Now, the Coast Guard says that a search for a 14-year-old boy who went missing while swimming in the River Mersey has ended. The boy became separated from friends in the water at Crosby last night, prompting a search involving a helicopter, police officers and firefighters, as Jonas Muller reports.
The search resumed here early this morning with the RNLI focusing on an area close to the radar tower where the 14-year-old was last seen. He went swimming there with a group of friends. When those friends emerged out of the water, they noticed that the teenager was not with them. The Coast Guard, police and fire. Today, that search continued. Now, this is a popular spot. There are a number of Anthony Gormley statues here on Crosby Beach, and more than 100,000 visitors come here over the summer every year. But the water can be dangerous. There are warning signs saying the water is not suitable for bathing and people should not swim. Now, early this morning, I noticed some of those emergency vehicles leaving, and around lunchtime today, we had confirmation from the Coast Guard that the search for the 14-year-old was stood down after some 15 hours. Eunice Muller, BBC Northwest Tonight, Crosby Beach.
Right, we'll have a full weather forecast for you shortly, and we'll hear about a swan song for the Lancashire cricket legend Jimmy Anderson. But first, people on the Isle of Man will not be given the chance to vote on assisted dying proposals after a bid to hold a referendum was rejected. The Chief Minister, Alfred Cannon, had argued that the public should be heard on such significant changes, but politicians narrowly rejected the move. Some said it was an attempt to delay the legislation. A man in his 20s who'd been chased by police died when the car he was driving crashed into a pub and caught fire. Officers from Greater Manchester Police had ended their pursuit. Has referred itself to the police watchdog. Plans for a new train service between London and Manchester have been announced. London North Western Railway is seeking permission to extend its services into Manchester Victoria using the West Coast Main Line. Now, the search for the missing Lancashire teenager Jay Slater was called off at the weekend, a fortnight after the 19-year-old from Oswaldtwistle went missing in Tenerife. It's a story which resonates with the family of Stephen Cook. Stephen, just like Jay, Stephen, who was from Sandbach, was on his first holiday with friends at the age of 20 when he disappeared in Crete in 2005. It was 12 years before his family found out what had happened when Stephen's remains were found by workmen at the bottom of a well. Well, Stephen's brother Chris has been chatting to me today, and he told me that his family knows exactly what Jay's family is now going through.
I first heard of Jay's case when my wife texted me to, she had got an alert from the BBC to check on my mum because, you know, something like this, it's very rare. But also a young lad, you know, going away on his first holiday and going missing within a very short time scale of arriving, you know, very similar to my brother. So, yes, the first thing really was to call mum to see, you know, that she was okay. But it certainly brings back memories. Missing persons abroad has that particular edge of helplessness because you're dealing with different cultures, you're dealing with terrains and language barriers, you know, police structures, you know, procedures and so on. So, yeah, it did bring back quite a few of the challenges that we certainly faced.
Obviously, it's 20 years since your brother went missing. The one big thing, or one of the big things that's changed over the past 2 decades is social media. And I know it's been quite upsetting for Jay Slater's family to see some of the stuff, people digging into his background and then speculating publicly and widely about what might have happened. That wasn't something you had to contend with, although the police did do extensive background checks on Stephen.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think it was the early days of Facebook then. And so it was very, very much a community of, you know, a close network of friends that was sort of gradually growing. You know, the Find Stephen Cook Facebook group was one of the first things that we did to connect people to the case. But I guess it's twofold because obviously you can reach more people nowadays. People are more engaged, but also the information can become amazingly damaging very quickly. I mean, it kills momentum. People think, well, that's what's happened, and they don't realise that they haven't been found. They then sort of become lost and close their eyes to the facts of the case that could actually really be proactively helping to get, you know, a missing person found. And we had numerous rumours over that, you know, from travellers have abducted him through to Albanian gangs. You know, the rumour mill against the reality are completely different things. And you know, and it's damaging to the case, but also it's damaging to your own energy as a family member when you just want to focus on doing your best to get your loved one home.
And upsetting.
Yeah, you know, extremely upsetting. And my advice would be just to, you know, put all that noise to one side and trust the authorities and filter things through to the authorities because they're the ones that are trained to do the follow-up. You know, that was the most exhausting part of our searches in those initial days, is just collating all that information and trying to wade through and try and understand what the reality is.
And just for people watching who don't know, what eventually happened was Stephen's remains were found at the bottom of a well. You were able to have an inquest. You still don't know exactly how he got there. But, of course, the Slaters are a good deal further back in the journey, and everyone still hopes, obviously, that Jay will be found alive and safe.
Yeah, I mean, although it was 12 years between Steve being found and, him going missing, there were still regular sightings that, we'd go over there every so often to chase up particular hotspots. He was actually found in an area that was searched previously and by ourselves and also by the police who searched all the wells in the area, and was found there at a later date, and hence it was an open inquest, open verdicts at the inquest, and to this day we still don't know, how he got down there. That
must be very difficult as a family to still, although sadly what happened, you don't know how it happened.
No, you don't, and they're the things that keep you up at night. And in your moments when you wake, they're the kind of things that come to your head and to your imagination. We try to turn that to focus that we've all got young children and blossoming families now. Our mum's a lot older, so she's a focal point for us, and we just focus on living the lives that Steve would want us to have.
Chris Cook, thank you so much for talking to us.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks to Chris for speaking to me earlier about his brother, Stephen Cook. Now, this morning, the first flight connecting the north of England to Shanghai in China took off from Manchester. The airport expects more than 100,000 passengers a year will travel on the new route, and there are hopes that it will bring a boost to our business and tourist attractions as well, as Katie Barnfield reports.
Cameras at the ready on a big day for Manchester Airport.
Welcome to Manchester.
The launch of their first ever direct flight to Shanghai, the only one in the country outside London. This morning, plenty of passengers were checking in to take advantage of the new route.
Before I had to go to London, or I'm going on flights in Manchester to transfer in Europe.
But now it will be quicker.
Yes, I'm happy.
Have you ever flown with this airline before?
No. The first time. Everything is the first time.
Because it's a quicker 1 hour drive.
Yeah. And more visits from your mum then?
Yeah.
The new flight will be the first ever route from Shanghai to the north of England. Manchester Airport think over 100,000 passengers a year will fly on it, and they hope it will be a big boost for tourism in the northwest. According to Visit Britain, tourists from China spend on average nearly £4,000 on a trip here, compared to around £800 for other countries. One area hoping to benefit from the extra cash is the Lake District. At Windermere Lake Cruises, they get more visitors from China than anywhere else outside the UK.
Well, they definitely like to go out on the lake. They like to be in the fresh air, especially if they've come from a city like Beijing or Shanghai. They like to experience the traditionally quintessentially English afternoon tea. So a lot of the hotels on the lake shores do the afternoon teas. And fish and chips is also really popular with the Chinese visitors.
It's been a difficult time for the aviation industry with COVID, the cost of living crisis. Are you confident that this route's going to be a success, that enough people will want to take it?
People are already trying to get to Shanghai and they're going via other places at the moment. Enough travellers are doing that to fill this flight already.
The new flights will run 3 times a week at first, but soon they hope to get them in the air every day. Katie Barnfield, BBC North West Tonight in Manchester.
Fish and chips on the lakeshore at Windermere is popular with me, never mind the Chinese tourists. It's lovely. Now, there are just effectively 2 more days of campaigning before we go to the polls in the general election. The countdown, which was weeks, is now barely hours. I'm sure you're counting down as well. We've been looking at the region's key battlegrounds over the last few weeks. Plenty of them are in Lancashire, as our Lancashire political reporter Mike Stevens now explains.
From Carnforth to Chorley, Barnoldswick to Blackpool, Lancashire is yet again at the forefront of the national picture, with Labour keen to win back seats they lost to the Conservatives at the last election. Over the past few weeks, we've seen a stream of senior Labour figures descending on the county, but senior Tories have been conspicuous by their absence. So what's going on? What's going through voters' minds?
A lot of the 2019 Conservative voting was, we feel left out, that's why we voted for Brexit now, we want it to happen. OK, so some of that's gone now, but you will still have people feeling, we feel ignored, we feel left out. How do we register that?
The boundary changes mean there's one less seat in Lancashire and cause some constituencies to become completely different.
Take Morecambe and Lonsdale, for example. Because of the boundary changes, the seat now takes in parts of Cumbria, rural places like Kirkby Lonsdale and Dent. So the dynamic of the campaign has totally changed. For example, the Lib Dems and the Greens have performed well in those areas in the local elections.
In Chorley, most of the main parties aren't contesting the seat, where Speaker Lindsay Hoyle is seeking re-election. Labour are hoping to win back heartlands like Burnley and Hyndburn, and the Tories want to hold on to Fylde and the Ribble Valley. Meanwhile, the Lib Dems are hoping to make gains in parts of East Lancashire, the Greens fancy their chances in Lancaster, and Reform UK leader Nigel Farage spent time campaigning in Blackpool last week. So what matters to people here ahead of polling day?
The doctor, health centre, wages.
There's people in this country that can't get a house or a flat, but then they're finding places for the boat people.
There are so many homeless people in the streets and there's nowhere for them to go.
Prices are going sky high and I need more money.
Cost of living is the most important thing if you look for this election.
1 million voters, 100 candidates, 15 constituencies, 1 vote. Mike Stevens, North West Tonight in Lancashire.
1 vote, and don't forget you need your photo ID on Thursday in order to be able to cast your vote in the general election, and you can find a list of all the candidates in all the constituencies on the BBC website. We heard what voters in Lancashire there were expressing concern about the cost of living. The Conservatives today have welcomed the news that household energy bills are falling by an average of £122 a year, and the Home Secretary, James Cleverly, says that that is thanks to the price capping system introduced by Rishi Sunak.
The energy price cap, which is in place because of the decisions that Rishi Sunak made, is going to be saving families money. We're helping with the cost of living. We've got inflation back down to 2%. We've kept unemployment low. We've got the fastest growing economy in the G7. We've got wages growing faster than prices for a number of months now. So we have achieved, despite some very, very difficult global economic circumstances, I think a really important thing.
Polling day then on Thursday. Right, let's move on to sport. Richard is here in the studio again tonight. And lots of euphoria, Rich, around England's win. It was highly dramatic at the Euros last night, but today tinged with real sadness.
Yes, Roger. Manchester City's John Stones dedicated England's 2-1 Euros win over Slovakia last night to a special little boy who died during the match. The family of Dylan Ramsey say the 5-year-old passed away peacefully after 4 years of battling against leukemia. John had previously shared the family's appeal for a bone marrow donor and described Dylan on social media as an inspiration to us all. He certainly was. Now, the weather scuppered any chance of seeing Jimmy Anderson in action today in what could be his last match for his county. Day 2 of Lancaster's county championship match against Nottinghamshire in Southport was a washout. Jimmy has confirmed that the test against West Indies next week will be his last for England. And as I found out, Red Rose supporters are determined to see him turning his arm for Lancashire while they still can.
Even in the wind and rain of Southport today, there was only one name on the lips of Lancashire fans.
One of my heroes, cricket heroes, fantastic.
An inspiration for, especially Jimmy, for so many people.
I've taken a day off work just to come and see him before he retires next week, when he plays in the next test, so hopefully.
Well, this isn't what the fans came to see, is it? The weather really isn't behaving. They want to see Jimmy Anderson out there with the bat for possibly the last time in a Lancashire shirt and certainly working his magic with the ball. Hopefully over the next couple of days, fingers crossed, they'll have a chance to see him out there, maybe for the last time for Lancashire.
Jimmy made his Red Rose debut 22 years ago, and even though because of his remarkable success with England, he hasn't played all that often for his county, he's always been a Lancastrian through and through.
I think it's important that we have probably one of the greatest bowlers of all time coming from Lancashire.
It's stickability with Jimmy.
it's never say die. He has that attitude.
He's a legend, isn't he? It's the end of an era.
And with a sellout yesterday, if there's a chance of play, we can expect bumper crowds tomorrow and on Wednesday.
It's always a privilege to be able to host first-class cricket here, for starters, but to have somebody like Jimmy Anderson playing in his probably final game for lengths is an added bonus.
And if and when Jimmy does get out in the middle, you know he'll be as competitive as ever. Just ask his teammates.
As soon as he steps over that line, he wants to get him out. He doesn't hold back.
Is he like that in training as well?
He is, yeah. Anything competitive, you'll go in there now and he'll be quiet. But yeah, if you game of one bounce or a game of cards, he'll just switch on and get that competitive mode on.
A mode that has made Jimmy Anderson one of the very best of all time, and Red Rose supporters will hope
we think. Now, the Isle of Man's Mark Cavendish has fallen short of winning a record 35th stage at the Tour de France, but in the end, the Manx missile may well have been relieved to reach the finish line unscathed. He narrowly avoided a big pile-up towards the end of today's third stage, which put paid to any chance he had of winning. He eventually finished down in 113th position. Wednesday should see this year's second sprint stage, giving Cav another shot at history. Hard luck to the Thunder. And in tennis, to Stockport's Liam Brodie. He's out of Wimbledon after losing in the first round, I'm afraid. Despite levelling his match at 1-all against Botic van der Zandschulp of the Netherlands, Brodie eventually crashed out 3-1 on the outside courts. Been practising that name all afternoon, Roger.
Be a delight for the commentators that Mr. Right. Van Schultz is still in. Brilliant. Rich, thank you very much. Yeah, bad luck to... our man, was it Liam Brodie?
Liam Brodie,
yeah, Liam Brodie. Yeah. Thank you, Rich. Thank you. Right, we've got the weather for you in just a minute. Before that, they were the women who helped to make millions of holidays. But Britain's seaside landladies of old were sometimes portrayed as being rather fearsome. Postcards depicted them as domineering matriarchs whose house rules were rather draconian, but the reality, of course, was rather different. And that's definitely according to a Morecambe researcher who has been delving into their history, as Dave Guest reports.
It was an age of simple pleasures when a week beside the British seaside was the highlight of the year for many working people. Each summer, they'd descend on Morecambe in their tens of thousands. Keeping them fed and watered in a home from home, an army of boarding house landladies.
Of course, any self-respecting seaside landlady would run a tight ship. Some would ring a gong at key points in the day, for instance, to tell them to get dressed and come down for breakfast. The Morecambe Heritage Centre secured funding from Historic England to document the doings of those doyens of seaside hospitality.
There is a sort of historical narrative that northern seaside landladies are these gruff, no-nonsense, arms-folded sort of battle axe types. I mean, obviously there would be the odd one, but in the main they were very kindly.
Back in the day, the accommodation was basic by today's standards.
Coal fire heated bathroom, so once somebody had a bath, you had to wait about half an hour or even more to get warm water again.
As times moved on, the boarding houses began offering luxuries, such as colour TV in the lounge and cocktails at the bar, not to mention plentiful food.
So my mum was a very warm and friendly lady. She loved feeding people. It would be a full English breakfast, followed by a full dinner, meat and vegetables and potatoes and you know, a full dinner with a dessert. And then in the tea time, they would do a salad.
Many landladies were sticklers for standards even in the swinging 60s.
One of the reasons that she didn't like anybody bringing a girl back or a girl bringing a boy back, she was very protective of her moral reputation.
And of course, they never knew what their guest would get up to next.
She used to take her teeth out before she was having a meal, and she put them in her handbag and the dog pinched them. But we couldn't get these teeth off the dog.
Cheap foreign travel put paid to many traditional boarding houses, but some have survived and thrived.
I think B&Bs will go on. All right, you get these new fads popping up and you can rent a room out, but is there any personal touch there? No.
So it seems there is still a place for the seaside B&B. Dave Guest, BBC North West Tonight, Morecambe.
Dave Guest lives in a guest house, but he would, obviously, wouldn't he? Now, a few of you have asked about Kay. She's had a bit of time off, but she's fine. Hopefully she'll be back very, very soon. But this evening...
Spells appearing overnight, but there'll be enough breeze and enough cloud to keep the temperatures up in double figures for most places. Into tomorrow. Showers become a bit more widespread through the afternoon, although there'll still be a few bright spells in between. A noticeable northwesterly breeze there tomorrow, top temperature around about 17 Celsius. As we head through the following few days, another frontal system comes in from the west on Wednesday. That brings more cloud and rain, and we're back to a windy spell of sunshine and showers as we head into Thursday. So for Wednesday, the cloud more widespread, the rain fairly widespread as well. Temperatures again stuck in the mid to high teens. You'll be lucky if you beat 17 Celsius on Wednesday afternoon, and what will be quite a brisk westerly breeze. As we head into Thursday, though, the winds really start to pick up, a strong gusty westerly picking up, pushing through a rash of showers with some sunny spells in between. By the time we get to Friday, the winds have eased slightly. They're still coming in from that westerly direction. They'll still bring some thicker cloud and some rain at times, just one or two brighter spells from time to time. So that's the way it's looking as we head through the middle and latter part of the week. As ever, you can get the latest information online on the BBC Weather website and on the BBC Weather app.
That was Paul Mooney. Thank you very much indeed, Paul. Bit of housekeeping. Tomorrow, because of the football, would you believe we're on at 4 o'clock tomorrow afternoon? Join us then if you can. If not, we will be on the BBC iPlayer by 6:30, so you can watch on iPlayer whenever you like. Join us at 6:30 and do it for real. But anyway, I hope you can join us tomorrow. Have a lovely evening, and thank you for watching. Good night.